What drives someone to change the world? Welcome to Social Trailblazers, where we seek to answer just that question. Join Kelly Hernandez, CEO of Nonprofit Marketing Nerds, as she interviews leading social innovators and nonprofit changemakers. This podcast is brought to you by DonorBox, the easiest way for nonprofits to rock their online donations.
Hey, Social Trailblazers. I am Kelly Hernandez, your host of the Social Trailblazers podcast, CEO of Nonprofit Marketing Nerds, and the original Nonprofit Marketing Nerd. I am so excited today to have with us Diania Merriam, who I've known for, I think, 6 years, and recently came back from attending her event in person in Cincinnati, Ohio in March, called EconoMe. And this is for financial independence, people or anyone on the journey to financial independence. And for those of you not familiar with that term, financial independence, especially the FIRE movement, financial independence, retiring early, this is the episode for you. And if that feels so crazy, I highly recommend you listen to this episode. Diania, who's an amazing woman, not only does she give great tips from her journey to financial independence, a lot has to do with mindset shifts. Personally, I'm a little bit of a fangirl. She really does have an inspiring story, not just of getting to financial independence, but what she's done to reinvest in the community and help others achieve financial independence through her work as the founder of the EconoMe Conference. I can't wait for you to get to know her. It's been a joy for me to know her. So let's dive in to this episode of Social Trailblazers.
I am, as I said, I'm so excited to have you today. Before we jump into EconoMe and all the amazing work you're doing now, I know you use the term fun employment. That's a big life change for people. What made you go that direction in life?
Yeah. So kind of to take a big step back, I didn't discover like all this financial independence, FIRE stuff, financial independence, retire early. I stumbled upon it when I was about 28. So up until that point, I would describe myself as fairly financially illiterate. I was living paycheck to paycheck, and really what prompted me to just even look into cleaning up my finances, to even put myself in the financial position to consider something like fun employment. I wanted to walk the Camino for my 30th birthday. And for those that don't know, this is a 500-mile trek across northern Spain. Historically, it's a Catholic pilgrimage. But in my mind, this was like a big dream, and I had assumed I was going to have to quit my job. And so I knew that I would need to either way get my finances in order, which kind of set me on this trajectory to discovering the FIRE movement, to getting out of debt, to saving and investing about 60% of my income. So I would say the initial interest was sparked by this desire to do the Camino. And then from there, I was really digging into how do you get out of debt, and it led me down a rabbit hole. And, almost 10 years later, I'm here to tell the tale.
Yeah. And, I know I'm a big follower of yours on multiple fronts. But for those that don't know, do you consider yourself fun employed now?
Yes. Yeah, I do. And the way I think about like what is even fun employment, I think it's a way of working that isn't driven by financial need. And so the financial need aspect of work is not driving my decisions anymore. It's really about, am I creating what I want to see in the world? Am I working the amount of hours as much or as little as I want? Am I working with who I want to work with? And I really see work as play now. And it's just a completely different way of relating to it.
And I think, many of our listeners, Social Trailblazers, they are nonprofit executives. And, you talk about fun employment. We're like, we are here to martyr for a cause, right? And I think probably a lot of their ears perked up. But for them, fun employment would be being able to make that decision to give back in a healthy space on their own terms towards a mission. But probably their ears perked up at financial independence. Can we take it, what exactly is that? Yeah.
Sure. So you're said to reach FI or financial independence when you have 25 times your annual expenses in your nest egg, right? I mean, that's what you're shooting for traditional retirement as well. And what that means is you can draw down on your portfolio at 4% per year. That's a general rule of thumb. and that money is going to last for the rest of your life. And so that's kind of the goal that people are striving for. The financial goal is to reach financial independence. That magic number is 25 times your annual expenses. And then you can retire from your career and kind of do whatever you want with your time.
Okay. And then I know, I think my first interaction with you, maybe I'd heard about you, but was attending the first annual EconoMe Conference, right?
Yeah.
And now what is this one coming up in March? I know I'll be there.
This will be the fifth one.
The fifth one. Okay. And you describe it as a party about money, which I think is so true. I go to a lot of conferences. It's one of, I would say my top two. I do like Power and Pumps conference as well, my top two conferences. What motivated you to create the event?
So I used to go to this conference called the World Domination Summit, which sounds like it's produced by like Pinky and the Brain or something like that, right? But essentially, it was a gathering of people that were living very non-conventional lives, whether they were starting charities or living a nomadic lifestyle, that kind of thing. And I would leave that event every year feeling like my life was so full of possibility. I think it was a big group of very like abundance mindset people. And I wanted to create that feeling for people in this specific community, the FIRE community. So that was really the kind of idea behind it. I actually came up with it while I was at World Domination Summit, and I took out my journal one morning and wrote 10 pages of this vision of what I wanted to create. And, ideally for me, it was supposed to be a retirement project. Like I thought I was going to reach my FI number, like we talked about earlier, when I was 40, and that this is what I would do with my time. I would create something cool, this party about money, this kind of world domination summit for the FIRE movement. The thing is, I got so excited about it that I couldn't wait. And so I ended up starting working on it in 2018.
And wow, look at it now. I think, just before we hopped on, we were talking, you sold out. I mean, how far in advance did you sell out this year?
It was over 6 months in advance. We sold out. And as of today, there's about 350 people on the wait list, which is crazy. It shows that this 6 years of work has paid off.
Yeah. And I'm so grateful. I know, people that listen, they know we've gone through immigration issues. I'm so grateful to be able to slide in just in time to be able to attend this year. So looking forward to it. There are a bunch of wonderful humans. I think one of the things that is unique about you as you entered the FI space, and I know you recently did get married. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Yeah. But you entered the space as a high income earning professional, as a single woman, and decided I'm going to do this thing. And you talked about the conference you were at that motivated you. Is there anything else that really got you to believe in yourself enough to take the leap, to start EconoMe, to take the risk, right? Invest in your own time and money.
Sure. So I think another driving force around why people pursue financial independence to begin with, first of all, most of us anticipate that at some point we would want to retire. We understand the value of saving and investing for our future. Not that there's any hey, I want to quit my job. I think most people recognize you may have to end working at some point due to age, due to health reasons, right? And so most people understand that there's merit behind saving for retirement. Mm-hmm. I think the FIRE movement just supercharges that in some sense and says, we're a little counterculture in that we don't believe in the dogma of working 9 to 5 until you're 65. I think we understand that at a certain level of financial security, there's a lot of opportunity cost in working full time. Mm-hmm. And, work is not the enemy here. I think that the FIRE movement gets a bad rap that we're just a bunch of people who don't want to work. Right. I think FIRE is really about separating your finances from your work and leveraging the money that you have to create more freedom in your life. Mm-hmm. And so one analogy I like to say about just the nature of work, most of us would agree that 3 meals a day is a pretty appropriate amount of food, right? But if society all of a sudden decided that actually you need to eat 6 meals a day and, you need a corporate overlord forcing all that food down your throat, a lot of us would wish to go back to 3 meals a day. And I think that the financial security and independence that can be achieved on the pursuit of FIRE allows you to really right size the role of work in your life. So I think a lot of people are attracted to this because they recognize that money creates options, and having that kind of financial security and financial independence allows you to have full autonomy over your time, which is the most precious resource that we have.
This episode is brought to you by DonorBox, the online fundraising platform that streamlines your process, elevates your donations, and ensures a user-friendly experience for your supporters. Explore the world of simplified, seamless fundraising at donorbox.org today.
I know for a lot of people listening, they might be like, wow, that sounds so far away. Like I still, have all my, there are probably social workers listening that are like, man, like I still have all my like MSW loans. How do I get there? But you were in a place, and you said your initial carrot was the Camino de Santiago, but you were in a place where you were just starting off and paying off debt. Can you give some quick tips to people maybe that are not quite like they're just like reframing now? What about that initial quick steps on?
Sure. So I would say that when you're starting off kind of looking at your finances, it's really important to kind of diagnose what the real issue is, right? You could have, for instance, an income problem, and it doesn't really matter how much you reduce your expenses. You are not making enough money to save any meaningful percentage. So your best bet is to focus your time and effort and figuring out how to increase your income, whether that's through side hustles, getting a higher paying job, that kind of thing. I think probably the easiest thing for people to do is take a very hard look at their expenses, because that's the kind of easiest thing to fix quickly, right? You can really look at, am I optimizing my spending? And the only way you could do that is if you take a very hard look at it. So you've got to track your expenses. You've got to maybe play around with some budgeting tools. Look at where your money is going and kind of take the position of, I'm going to tell my money where to go versus wondering where it went, right? That's the whole crux of budgeting. And a lot of people will give it a bad rap because it feels like deprivation. I think that is kind of another pillar of diagnosis of, if you are feeling deprived by doing things like bringing your lunch to work, for instance, right? I remember this is a big thing for me because I used to eat out a lot. And it's like, I was living in New York City. I was cleaning up my finances, and I would like bring my lunch to work every day. And people treated me like this was a huge, it was so much deprivation that this was a big hardship for me to take my lunch to work every day. And what I would say to that is, I think there needs to be a mindset shift of recognizing the material abundance you already have, and like especially if you're living in a first world country and like we are so incredibly privileged. It is not a hardship to do some of these very simple things, like optimize what you're spending on your housing, on your transportation, and on your food. I think that it takes a very big mindset shift to recognize the material abundance you already have. So that really curbs the desire for more, because we have to recognize that we live in a consumerist society. We have been trained since birth to be good consumers. And so to push back on that, I think takes a lot of intention and a big mindset shift. And that way, when you're reducing your expenses, it doesn't feel like deprivation. For me, it felt like creativity and resourcefulness, because rather than eating out every night, I made my apartment more fun than a bar. And I would host these incredible dinner parties, or I would host clothing exchanges, or, I found a lot of creativity and satisfaction in learning how to cook. And so I think it's just a shift in perspective. One of the things I like to say is, the less materialistic I am, the more idealistic I get to be. And that's an incredible privilege.
Yes. And I hope that some people, I know one of my first steps, are you familiar with Project 333? That like...
yeah, for the clothing, like the capsule collection kind of thing. Yeah.
That was one of my first, I think you're reminding me, like one of the first steps I did in terms of being intentional was like, get rid of, now I have, a huge walk-in closet, but my wardrobe is like, right, filling up a tenth of it. And yeah, it's freeing, right? Intentionality. So I want to take a step back because you kind of brushed over this, and I think it's something that I know I've had on my bucket list forever and was intending to in March, and then it didn't happen this past year. Do the Camino de Santiago. Tell us a little bit more about maybe like where were you at going into it, and is there any like big aha moments or takeaways you had on the other side of it?
Yeah. So I think going into it, I was single. I had no children. By that time, I'm out of debt. I'm saving a lot of money. I felt like I had the kind of freedom that people dream of, and I felt like I needed to do something with it. And I walked into walking the Camino thinking it was going to change my life. I thought, I'm going to figure out what my purpose is. Maybe I'll meet my husband on the Camino, then I'll go travel the world. And I just thought I was going to figure everything out. And I would say that what it ended up doing for me is not that I figured everything out, but I kind of recognized where my pain points were. I recognized where I needed to do more work, like personal development wise. And it also really helped me disconnect from my work. A lot of us have a lot of identity in what we do for a living. Mm-hmm. And on the Camino, there's almost like a depth of person that you interact with on the Camino. They don't really care what you do for work. They want to know, if you had enough water that day or what your spiritual reason for walking the Camino is. And you have a lot of very deep conversations that just are not what you're used to day to day, especially in the US. Like our culture is very much focused on what you do for a living. It's a very standard question to ask people when you first meet them. And nobody asked me what I did for a living on the Camino. And I think that really helped me disconnect from the identity of my work. And it allowed me to kind of see different sides of myself. Like before I went on the Camino, I considered myself kind of an asshole New Yorker. Like I'd get really angry if someone was walking slow in front of me on the sidewalk, and next thing you know, I'm in Spain and I am so generously helping people with their packs, and I'm worried about their blisters. And I'm, it's just, I got to see a side of myself, a kind of maternal side of myself that I didn't really know was there. So I do think when you put yourself in those kind of, different situations, different life experiences, it can allow aspects of yourself to emerge in surprising ways.
And hopefully, like you said, the positive aspects of yourself.
Yes.
It doesn't always happen, but yeah, too funny. So, we talked about fun employment, and then you talked about, I'm going to try to walk through, and then you talked about, kind of removing your job and job title being the primary identity you connect with. When people ask you, like, who are you? What do you do now? What do you tend to say?
I think it depends on my mood, honestly. I think for the most part, if you tell someone that you retired from your corporate career at 33, it's a very agitating concept for a lot of people. And so I'll tell people I'm a podcaster, I'm an event producer. It's still my work, though I would say I don't make much money from it. So it's like I'm basically unemployed, but I'm not worried about money, is because I have hobbies, but it looks like work to other people. So it's socially acceptable. So yeah, I would say, there are times that I'm, a bit more vocal about the fact that I retired pretty young and I was in the financial position to, again, separate my work from my finances. And that can open up some interesting conversations. But yeah, I just think that now I used to kind of brag about my job, I have this office in the Empire State Building and I have all these celebrity clients and blah, blah, blah. And I would say now I'm very proud of what I created. But what I feel takes up more of my headspace is what I think is the most important thing in life, which is my health and my relationships. Mm-hmm. And that really drives most of my decisions of how am I optimizing for that versus any kind of career growth or financial gain.
Nonprofit and association leaders, I've got a secret weapon for you. Imagine sitting down for just 30 minutes, yes, 30, and walking away with a treasure chest of marketing gold. polished videos, scroll-stopping reels, compelling blogs, and share-worthy social posts. That's the Content Lab, where our team of marketing nerds transforms your mission into magic. You bring your expertise, and we'll handle the rest. Ready to feel like a marketing wizard? Visit nonprofit-nerd.com and check out the Content Lab. Type discount 200 at checkout to grab your $200 discount. Limited time only. Catch you in the lab. The Content Lab.
Wow. And I think, I'm making a little note right now, like, oh, relationships and health. That's probably something I need to reevaluate. Oh, thank you for this lesson. Thank you for being a guest, and thank you for giving me this live lesson. So you're a very modest person, and you're a very direct person, right? It's probably it's the New Yorker in you, right? Like, you're a little bit of both. But you really have been, for a lot of people in the FIRE movement, right? Whether it's financial independence or financial independence, early retirement. You've really been the face for a lot of people, especially like high income earning women, to look up to. And I think you've been on, let me see if I can remember, in the New York Times. You've probably been on Good Morning America. How have those experiences, right? You're the, national, how have those experiences, I think, shaped you as a human?
I would say I largely have distaste for mass media. I think the FIRE movement is very misrepresented. And for me personally, I felt like they kind of took my story and misrepresented it. Because I don't think their goal is to inspire. I don't think my story is particularly inspiring to anyone. And the reason why I say that is because if you're financially literate, you would look at what I did and go, oh, she spent less than she earned. There's no news here. Right. But if you're financially illiterate, you would take my story and it would agitate you. Right. That you feel like it is a reflection it reflects poorly on you, that you couldn't pick yourself up by your bootstraps and that kind of thing. I think that, and we can edit this out. I feel like I'm struggling to find my words here.
No, I think you're doing great, actually.
I think that FIRE is largely unappealing to most people because it feels so inaccessible. And so I don't feel the need to try to convince anyone to pursue FIRE. I think what's most helpful for most people is financial security. That's much more accessible, to learn the basics of financial literacy, to spend less than you earn and invest the difference. If you're saving 10%, maybe 20% of your income, you are doing way better than most people. And so to look at people in the FIRE movement saving 50 to 80% of their income, I think it can make people feel bad that they don't feel like they can do the same. And this isn't a competition, right? No one's winning prizes for how early they can retire. So I just would encourage people, if you have interest in the FIRE movement, great. You're a unicorn if this stuff appeals to you. But what was probably more interesting and more helpful is financial literacy and financial security. I would strive for that first.
Yeah, and I know that you do, and I guess I'll segue in. I know that your podcast, you mentioned it briefly, where you talk a lot about those things. Will you talk a little bit more about your podcast specifically?
Sure. So it's the podcast is called Optimal Finance Daily, and it's basically a daily show in 10 minutes or less where I read you an article from a personal finance blogger, and then I offer about 300 words of commentary on each one. And what's good about the show is that we've got about 200 contributing authors, and you're going to hear a lot of conflicting viewpoints about money. And what I like about that is most financial advice is only as helpful as the context in which it's given, right? And so should you pay off your house or should you invest that money? Well, it depends, right? It depends on the context of your overall financial picture. And so there's strong arguments on either side, depending again on the circumstances that you're asking that question. And so I really love, again, the conflicting opinions that I get on the show. And I've now done, over 1,500 episodes reading all of these different articles. And I would say the only thing that everyone agrees on is just spend less than you earn. That is really the hardest part. I would say paying attention to your spending in a society that really glorifies consumerism that is an act of rebellion in itself, right? Just paying attention to what you're spending money on, tracking your spending and budgeting. That's good money management. The investing stuff, the optimizing, the tax loss harvesting, all the like fun little things that you can do to make tiny 1% improvements are, again, pretty small compared to the overarching advice, which is to live below your means. If you could do that, you're doing awesome.
Awesome. No, and I thank you so much for that advice. And I know that's so wild to me. You said 1,500 episodes. And I think I remember when you first started, and I'm like, man, I've been following you for a while. That's hilarious. So you mentioned your podcast, and I know I'm going to drop in the show notes both information for EconoMe and your podcast, where if people want to connect. I know for a lot of nonprofit executives that are listening right now, they are very much in the weeds in daily life, and this is probably a great positive highlight of new information for them. Where can they go to follow you and connect?
Yeah. So you can listen to me on Optimal Finance Daily. You can subscribe on any podcast app. You can also go to EconoMeConference.com, and that's economy with an M-E at the end, not an M-Y. Fun play on words. There you can sign up for my mailing list. I send like 2 emails a year. I'm not very active, with my mailing list, but that's the best way to kind of stay informed on what's going on with the conference, when tickets go on sale, who the speakers are, that kind of thing. And on social, I am like on the different social channels. I don't post that often on my business accounts, just like enough so that they don't look dead. But on my personal Facebook is probably where I'm the most active. And you could just find me there on my name with my name.
Awesome. Well, thank you again. And thank you for being a social trailblazer. And thank you for sharing a lot of helpful information related to finance, financial independence, and definitely just living below your means.
That's right.
Thank you.
Thank you for tuning in to Social Trailblazers. If you enjoyed today's episode, don't forget to subscribe, leave a review, and share it with others who are passionate about making a difference. Special thanks to our sponsor, DonorBox, for supporting this podcast and the incredible work of nonprofits everywhere. Join us next time as we continue to dive deep into the motivations of the change makers shaping our world. Until then, keep trailblazing.